I used to think the most dangerous sound in a marriage was silence. I was wrong. It is the roar of 300 Silicon Valley elites laughing while my husband prices my dignity at $20 over a microphone. He thought it was a brilliant power play. He had no idea that single $20 bill was the kill shot to his entire tech empire, or that a stranger in the shadows was finally ready to pay my true worth. Hello, wonderful listeners of Maya Revenge Stories, and thank you for tuning in today. Unfortunately, YouTube has completely disabled the monetization feature on our channel, leaving us without the budget to keep this operation running. If you find yourself captivated by today's story, please consider supporting us by joining the Maya Revenge Stories Patreon community, where you can listen to exclusive, true stories that are even better, much longer, and incredibly detailed with multiple emotional voice actors that we simply cannot publish publicly on YouTube. You can join our community right now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by clicking the Patreon link located in the video description or the pinned comment. Now, let us begin today's incredible journey of betrayal and retribution, told through the eyes of our protagonist, Lucy Ward. I am 34 years old, and tonight, I am standing as quietly as a ghost in the dimly lit corner of the Grand Plaza Hotel ballroom. The crystal chandeliers above cast a golden, shimmering light over the annual fundraising gala of Ethereus Solutions, the skyrocketing tech company where my husband, Marcus Sterling, serves as the chief executive officer. The air in the room is heavy with the scent of expensive cologne, roasted Wagyu beef, and the intoxicating perfume of unearned arrogance. I press my shoulders against the cold wall, silently observing the elite crowd of Silicon Valley venture capitalists and angel investors as they mingle, clinking their champagne flutes and celebrating a lie. To the 300 guests in this opulent room, I am nothing more than Marcus Sterling's perfectly trained, obediently quiet wife. They believe my only contributions to this empire were selecting the imported white orchids on their tables and agonizing over the 5-course tasting menu they are currently digesting. When they look at me, they see a beautiful accessory. Not a single person in this ballroom knows the truth. They do not know that I am the anonymous software engineer who spent countless sleepless nights typing away in a freezing garage to write the revolutionary core algorithm that actually powers Ethereus Solutions. I built the machine. Marcus just put his name on the box. Across the room, Marcus is laughing loudly, holding a crystal glass filled with aged bourbon. It is his 4th glass of the evening. He is surrounded by a tight circle of tech bros, men wearing designer vests who worship market disruption but still thrive on primitive, high school power dynamics. The alcohol has brought out the flush in Marcus's cheeks and the cruel, arrogant tilt of his jaw. He thrives on this attention. He needs to assert his dominance, not just in the boardroom, but in every room he enters. The evening's entertainment includes a charity auction, a tax-deductible playground where these men throw away $50,000 for a golf trip or $100,000 for a private yacht tour. But Marcus, fueled by bourbon and his own massive ego, decides he wants a different kind of spectacle. His predatory gaze sweeps across the ballroom and locks onto me in my quiet corner. He marches over, grabs my wrist with a grip tight enough to leave bruises, and physically drags me up the carpeted steps onto the brightly lit stage. The heat of the spotlights immediately blinds me. Marcus wraps his heavy arm around my waist, pulling me against him like a hunting trophy, and raises the microphone to his lips. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announces, his voice booming through the massive speakers and demanding the attention of the entire room. "For our next charity item, let us start at $20. Who wants to buy this completely useless wife, I promise you? She does not know a single thing about how to code, but her morning coffee is absolutely fantastic." The silence lasts for only a fraction of a second before the entire ballroom erupts into roaring laughter. 300 people, the supposed geniuses and visionaries of our generation, throw their heads back and laugh at the punchline of my entire existence. Down in the front row, a drunken executive whose firm just poured $5 million into Ethereus excitedly raises his numbered bidding paddle into the air. $20. the executive shouts, slurring his words as he plays along with my husband's degrading game. The crowd laughs even harder. I do not shed a single tear. I do not flinch, and I do not look away. I stand perfectly, terrifyingly still on that stage, my spine rigid and my face an unreadable mask of pure ice. I simply lock my eyes with Marcus. He is grinning from ear to ear, glowing with toxic triumph, completely oblivious to the fact that he has just severed the very last thread of my loyalty. He thinks this is a brilliant power play. He thinks he owns me. Suddenly, a voice cuts straight through the deafening, toxic symphony of laughter. It is a calm, chillingly quiet voice, yet it carries a gravitational weight that instantly suffocates the noise in the room. It comes from the deepest shadows at the very back of the hall. $2 million. The collective breath of the ballroom vanishes. 300 heads turn in synchronized shock toward the darkness at the back doors. The atmosphere instantly thickens, turning as heavy and suffocating as wet concrete. The smug, victorious smile on Marcus's face instantly freezes, his jaw going slack in pure confusion. Out of the shadows, a man steps forward into the dim light. He is dressed in an immaculate, tailor-made black suit. His physical presence is entirely overwhelming, radiating an aura of absolute, undisputed power and cold authority that makes every billionaire in the room suddenly look like a terrified child. The man in the black suit does not rush. He walks down the center aisle of the ballroom with the measured, unhurried pace of an apex predator. The sea of wealthy investors and Silicon Valley executives parts before him instinctively, stepping aside as if reacting to a sudden drop in barometric pressure. The heavy silence in the room is broken only by the rhythmic, sharp sound of his leather shoes striking the hardwood floor. Every eye is glued to him, yet he looks at no one. His gaze, sharp and glacial, bypasses the gawking crowd, bypasses my husband, and lands directly on me. As he ascends the carpeted stairs to the stage, the sheer gravity of his presence dwarfs Marcus. My husband, realizing he is rapidly losing control of his own spectacle, hastily plasters on his signature charismatic smile. Marcus takes a step forward, aggressively invading the man's personal space in a classic corporate intimidation tactic, and aggressively thrusts out his right hand for a firm shake. The stranger does not even look at the extended hand. He lets it hang there in the empty air, completely ignored, an agonizingly public rejection that causes the flush in Marcus's cheeks to deepen from alcohol-induced pink to a humiliating, furious crimson. Instead, the man stops mere inches from me. For the first time all evening, someone is looking at me not as a prop, not as a punchline, but with a profound, piercing respect that makes my breath catch in my throat. Marcus lets out a nervous, booming laugh, desperately trying to salvage his shattered ego. Well, I appreciate the enthusiasm, friend, but we are clearly just having a little fun here. It is an inside joke. My wife and I are just playing around for the crowd. The stranger finally turns his head slowly toward Marcus. The sheer contempt in his eyes is cold enough to freeze boiling water. Without breaking eye contact with my husband, the man reaches into the interior pocket of his tailored jacket. He withdraws a sleek, dark leather checkbook and a heavy silver fountain pen. Resting the leather-bound book on the edge of the acrylic speaker podium, he swiftly uncaps the pen and writes a sequence of words with sharp, deliberate strokes. He rips the paper from the spine with a sharp tear, holding it between two fingers, and tosses it lightly. The check flutters through the air and lands face up directly on the center of Marcus's chest, forcing my husband to catch it against his suit lapel. "I am not joking," the man says, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that echoes through the microphone. $2 million for her freedom. He turns to face the paralyzingly quiet audience. My name is Elias Vance. A collective, audible gasp ripples through the crowd of 300 elites. The name hits the room like a physical shockwave, even sequestered in my garage, writing code for years. I know exactly who Elias Vance is. He is the ghost of the venture capital world. A ruthless, brilliant billionaire famous for orchestrating hostile takeovers of colossal tech conglomerates. He is a myth, a man who famously despises the public eye and has never once attended a charity gala or a networking event. Yet, here he is, standing on my husband's stage, dismantling his kingdom with a single piece of paper. Elias turns his back on the crowd and faces me again. He extends his hand, palm open, offering a lifeline out of the suffocating hell my life has become. "Ms. Ward," Elias says, his tone steady and commanding, "if you are tired of being the shadow for the man who steals your intellectual property, my car is waiting outside." The entire ballroom holds its breath. Marcus is stammering now, his confidence completely shattered, his hands shaking as he grips his glass of red wine, trying to formulate a sentence that will reassert his ownership over me. He barks my name, a pathetic, desperate command. I do not look at Marcus. I look down at my left hand. The 3-carat diamond wedding ring feels incredibly heavy, a glittering handcuff that has chained me to a narcissist for half a decade. With slow, deliberate precision, I grip the diamond with my right hand and slide the gold band off my finger. The metal feels cold as it leaves my skin. I turn to Marcus, meeting his panicked eyes for one final second. I hold the ring directly over his crystal glass and simply let go. The diamond hits the dark red wine with a sharp splash, sinking instantly to the bottom of the glass. Drops of burgundy liquid splatter across the pristine white cuff of Marcus's expensive shirt, looking exactly like bloodstains. Without a single word to the man I once called my husband, I place my bare hand into the steady, warm grip of Elias Vance. Together, we turn our backs on Marcus Sterling. We step off the illuminated podium and begin the long walk down the center aisle, leaving 300 of the most powerful people in California staring in absolute, stunned silence. What Marcus does not realize, as he stands frozen on that stage with my discarded ring at the bottom of his glass, is that the silence did not protect him. In the front row, hidden behind a floral centerpiece, the glowing lens of a smartphone camera had been recording the entire exchange. Before Elias and I even reached the heavy brass exit doors of the Grand Plaza Hotel, a guest presses a button, the high-definition video of my husband auctioning me off for $20, and Elias Vance buying my freedom for $2 million, is uploaded to the internet. The digital wildfire has been ignited, and by midnight, it will consume Marcus Sterling's entire world. The heavy door of the black Maybach clicks shut, sealing us inside a sanctuary of pristine, soundproof leather and polished walnut. The chaotic energy of the Grand Plaza vanishes instantly, replaced by the low, powerful purr of the engine as the driver pulls seamlessly into the San Francisco night. For a long moment, the only sound is the rhythmic passing of streetlights washing over the tinted windows. I sit rigidly against the plush seat, my heart hammering wildly against my ribs, bracing myself for whatever this enigmatic billionaire expects in return for his dramatic rescue. Elias Vance leans back, his posture entirely relaxed, and observes me with those same calculating, piercing eyes. I want to make one thing abundantly clear. "Ms. Ward," he begins, his voice smooth and entirely devoid of the arrogance I am so used to hearing from men in power. That $2 million was not an act of charity. I do not rescue damsels in distress, and I certainly do not throw away capital on pity. Consider that check a non-refundable deposit for a truly brilliant mind. I frown, confusion momentarily overriding my lingering adrenaline. "A brilliant mind?" I ask, my voice trembling slightly. "Marcus just auctioned me off as a useless housewife who can only make coffee. I arrange flowers. Mr. Vance, I do not know what you think you just bought." Elias lets out a quiet, genuine chuckle. He reaches into the leather briefcase resting on the seat beside him and pulls out a sleek tablet. He taps the screen once and hands it to me. "For the past 3 years, my acquisition team at Vance Vanguard Corporation has been hunting a ghost," Elias explains, leaning forward slightly. "We have been tracking an anonymous hacker and software engineer operating under the digital moniker Cipher Blue, This individual released a fragment of open-source artificial intelligence architecture on a dark web forum 3 years ago. It was a fragmented neural network routing protocol, and it was, without exaggeration, the most elegant piece of digital engineering I have ever seen. The breath violently leaves my lungs. My fingers grip the edges of the tablet so tightly my knuckles turn white. On the glowing screen, lines of my own deeply encrypted source code stare back at me. We exhausted immense resources trying to find Cipher Blue, Elias continues, his tone laced with absolute reverence. I needed that architecture for our upcoming global infrastructure project. My lead analysts finally caught a slip in a masked IP address and traced the digital footprints back to a residential server in Palo Alto. Your server, Lucy, I know exactly who you are. He pauses, letting the gravity of his words settle in the quiet cabin, before delivering the final, shattering blow. During our investigation, we also analyzed the proprietary algorithm that Ethereus Solutions has been aggressively selling to venture capitalists. It took my engineers less than an hour to realize the truth. Marcus did not invent anything. The Ethereus core product is nothing more than a butchered, unstable, heavily corrupted clone of your original framework. He stole it directly from your personal computer. Hearing the truth spoken aloud by one of the most powerful men in the tech industry breaks something wide open inside me. A physical weight, one I have carried for half a decade, violently shatters, for years, in the quiet isolation of our home. Marcus had systematically and ruthlessly gaslit me. Whenever I showed him my work, he would sigh, pat my head condescendingly, and tell me my code was a messy, unsellable hobby. He convinced me that the industry would never take a woman like me seriously, that the underlying logic was flawed, and that he was doing me a massive favor by cleaning it up and putting his own name on the patent to protect us financially. He made me believe I was entirely dependent on his business acumen. He made me believe I was nothing. Tears finally spill over my eyelashes, hot and fast, streaming down my cheeks. But they are not tears of sorrow. They are tears of pure, blinding liberation. I am not crazy. I am not worthless. I am a genius, and the architect of an empire my husband is currently stealing. He told me it was garbage, I whisper, my voice cracking under the weight of the revelation. He told me no one would ever want it. He is a parasite, Elias replies sharply, his eyes flashing with raw disgust. And parasites only survive by convincing their hosts that they cannot live without them. Elias reaches into the briefcase again and withdraws a thick folder bound in premium cardstock. He places it gently onto my lap. This is a binding offer of employment and a strategic partnership contract, Elias states firmly. It includes a signing bonus of tens of millions of dollars, full equity options, and the title of Chief Architect at Vance Vanguard Corporation. I want you to build the future with me, under your own name, no more shadows, no more hiding. I look down at the contract. The numbers printed on the page are astronomical, representing more wealth and power than Marcus could ever dream of securing. It is the ultimate vindication, a golden ticket out of the hell I have endured. Slowly, I close the folder and slide it back across the leather seat toward Elias. He raises a single eyebrow, mildly surprised. Is the compensation inadequate? The compensation is beyond generous, Mr. Vance, I say, lifting my chin and meeting his gaze with a newfound, icy resolve. But I will not sign it, not yet. I reach up and wipe the remaining tears from my face, my posture straightening as the terrified housewife dies completely, leaving only Cipher Blue in her place. Before I can build a new empire with you, I have a responsibility to attend to. I tell him, my voice dropping to a dangerously calm whisper. I am going to systematically dismantle my old prison. I am going to tear Ethereus Solutions down to the studs. And I am going to watch Marcus Sterling lose everything he loves. A slow, dangerous smile spreads across Elias Vance's face. He leans back into the shadows of the Maybach, utterly delighted by my answer. Well then, Ms. Ward, Elias says smoothly, you provide the match, and I will gladly provide the absolute best legal army in New York to pour the gasoline. The digital wildfire I predicted ignited faster than even I anticipated. By the time the sun rose over San Francisco the next morning, the 75-second video of my public humiliation and Elias Vance's dramatic intervention had amassed tens of millions of views across all major professional and social networks. The internet was completely saturated with the footage. The corporate fallout was instantaneous and utterly brutal. Within 48 hours, the stock valuation of Ethereum Solutions plummeted by a staggering 35%. The high-profile environmental, social, and governance investment funds, whose entire brand identities relied heavily on ethical leadership and corporate morality, began issuing harsh public statements, threatening to pull their capital immediately. The pristine, visionary facade my husband had spent half a decade cultivating was rapidly crumbling into dust. But a parasite does not simply let go of its host. It digs its claws in deeper. Marcus was backed into a terrifying corner, and that is precisely when a narcissist becomes his most dangerous. Instead of issuing a public apology or attempting damage control, he went on a vicious, scorched-earth offensive. Within 3 days of the gala, the narrative online began to aggressively twist. Marcus hired a notoriously ruthless dark public relations firm, injecting millions of dollars into a coordinated smear campaign designed to entirely destroy my credibility. Anonymous sources suddenly flooded tech blogs and gossip sites with fabricated, heavily documented stories about my mental stability. They painted me as a paranoid, delusional woman who had suffered a severe nervous breakdown. Worse, they spun a salacious, highly engineered narrative that I had been carrying on a secret, sordid affair with the billionaire Elias Vance for several months, and that we had orchestrated the entire gala spectacle together to publicly extort my poor, victimized husband. Then came the suffocating legal bombardment. A courier arrived at the secure location where I was staying, handing me a stack of threatening legal documents thicker than a phone book. Marcus had unleashed his army of corporate attorneys, filing a massive lawsuit against me in civil court. The paperwork included a draconian non-compete agreement and a devastating injunction claiming that every single line of code I had ever written during the entire duration of our marriage was legally the intellectual property of Ethereum Solutions. According to his high-paid lawyers, my brain belonged to the marital estate, and by extension, my genius belonged exclusively to him. To ensure I was thoroughly crippled, Marcus executed his favorite, most abusive tactic, financial starvation. I walked down to a local cafe to buy a simple cup of black coffee, only to have my debit card loudly declined at the register. When I logged into my banking application, a stark red banner informed me that all of my personal savings and our joint accounts had been completely frozen by an emergency court order. I had $0 and 0 cents to my name. It was a classic, textbook move designed to suffocate me, to leave me entirely destitute and terrified, so that I would have absolutely no choice but to crawl back to his mansion on my hands and knees, begging for basic survival, and blindly signing away the rights to my own algorithms just to eat. In the past, this overwhelming, multifaceted assault would have completely crushed me. I would have collapsed under the immense weight of his manipulation and the sheer terror of public humiliation. But Marcus had made a fatal, irreversible miscalculation. He was fighting the terrified, submissive wife he thought he knew, completely oblivious to the fact that he was actually at war with Cipher Blue. I did not panic. I did not shed a single tear. I simply returned to the ultra-secure, penthouse safe house Elias Vance had arranged for me in the heart of the financial district. The apartment was a minimalist fortress of concrete and soundproof glass. But more importantly, Elias had outfitted the main office exactly to my highly specific technical requirements. I sat down in the ergonomic leather chair in front of 3 massive, curved monitors. The soft, ambient hum of the high-powered servers beneath the desk was the only sound in the quiet room. I cracked my knuckles, took a deep, steadying breath, and began to type. My fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard with blistering speed, executing complex commands and penetrating layers of network security with the cold precision of a seasoned digital surgeon. Marcus might have successfully locked me out of my bank accounts, but he could never lock me out of the digital architecture I had built from the ground up with my own two hands. I bypassed the newly updated Ethereus firewalls in less than 12 minutes. I slipped silently through the encrypted backdoor protocols I had secretly coded into the framework years ago. Moving invisibly through the company's most secure internal servers, I was hunting for a weakness, a blind spot in Marcus's frantic defense strategy. What I found was infinitely better. Buried deep within a heavily encrypted, hidden executive communications folder, I uncovered a series of highly confidential emails and draft contracts. Marcus was not trying to save Ethereus solutions at all. He knew the core algorithm was inherently unstable without my continuous, daily updates, and he knew the current public relations nightmare was fatal to the company's long-term survival. Instead, he was secretly negotiating a desperately fast acquisition deal behind his board's back. He was attempting to sell the entire company to a massive global tech conglomerate for a staggering valuation of $800 million. His master plan was to finalize the merger quietly, cash out his massive founder equity, and completely abandon the sinking ship, leaving the new buyers with a defective, broken product and his current investors with absolutely nothing but worthless shares. A cold, dangerous smile slowly spread across my face as the harsh blue light of the monitors reflected in my eyes. I systematically downloaded every single encrypted file, every hidden email thread, and every fraudulent financial projection Marcus had sent to the potential buyers. He truly thought he was only days away from securing nearly $1 billion and flying away entirely unscathed. He thought he had successfully buried me under a mountain of legal threats, vicious lies, and financial ruin. He was incredibly wrong. I was not just going to survive his cowardly attack. I was going to take his ultimate, golden escape route, turn it into an inescapable steel trap, and I was going to be the one to press the button that burned his empire to the ground. The expansive conference room inside my secure penthouse quickly transformed into a formidable war room. Elias Vance did not simply provide me with a lawyer. He unleashed a ruthless, highly coordinated army of New York City corporate litigators. For 48 sleepless hours, we worked meticulously in the shadows, laying the invisible tripwires that would soon tear my husband's fraudulent empire apart. I sat at the head of a massive glass table, sliding a heavily encrypted hard drive toward the lead attorney. Marcus had foolishly built his entire legal strategy on the assumption that I had created the algorithm during our marriage, making it community property. He was wrong. I guided the legal team through a labyrinth of deeply buried digital footprints. I presented undeniable, time-stamped documentation, proving that I had completely patented the core logic framework under an anonymous limited liability company a full 2 years before Marcus and I ever went on our first date. The underlying architecture was never a marital asset. It was my exclusive intellectual property from the very beginning, legally shielded behind a corporate structure Marcus had zero knowledge of. The lawsuit he filed against me was not just baseless, it was a documented act of perjury. While the lawyers prepared the legal guillotine, Elias Vance vanished into the corporate underworld to cut off Marcus's only escape route. Armed with the irrefutable data I provided, Elias secured a highly classified, off-the-books meeting with the executive board of the exact global tech conglomerate that Marcus was secretly attempting to sell Ethereus solutions to. Elias did not raise his voice or make dramatic threats. He simply slid a thick black dossier across their polished mahogany table. He showed the prospective buyers the unvarnished, terrifying truth. He provided them with raw diagnostic reports proving that the Ethereus software they were about to purchase for $800 million was essentially an empty, hollow shell. Without my specific cryptographic keys and my continuous daily updates, the heavily corrupted system Marcus was peddling would completely implode within 90 days. Elias effectively poisoned the well, instantly turning Marcus's billion-dollar golden parachute into toxic waste. The buyers silently withdrew their offer that very afternoon, leaving Marcus completely stranded, though he did not know it yet. Ignorant of the massive trap closing around him, Marcus executed his final, most pathetic public relations maneuver. On the fourth day of the scandal, he organized an emergency, nationally televised press conference right in the main lobby of the Aetherius headquarters. I watched him on the massive flat-screen television in my safe house. He stepped up to the podium, looking intentionally disheveled, expertly playing the role of the exhausted, heartbroken husband. He looked directly into the camera lenses, his voice shaking with perfectly manufactured emotion, aiming to soothe the panicked investors who were rapidly dumping their shares. My wife is currently experiencing a severe, highly concerning mental health crisis. Marcus lied smoothly to the reporters, managing to squeeze a single, theatrical tear from his eye. I love her deeply, despite the terrible things she has done, and the immense stress she has placed on this company. I am willing to forgive everything. I just want her to come home and get the psychiatric help she so desperately needs. It was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. He was trying to portray himself as a merciful savior while publicly stripping away my sanity. It was the exact same tactic he had used in our living room for 5 years. But this time, I was not trapped in his house, and I was no longer listening. As Marcus continued his sickening performance on live television, I turned my chair away from the broadcast and faced my 3 glowing monitors. My fingers rested lightly on the mechanical keyboard. Years ago, anticipating that my husband's boundless greed might one day turn against me, I had quietly woven a highly sophisticated backdoor protocol deep into the foundational code of the Aetherius mainframe. It was a digital dead man's switch, designed purely for absolute self-defense. I took a slow, deep breath, perfectly syncing my timing with his live broadcast. Just as Marcus opened his mouth to answer a reporter's question about the company's secure future, I pressed the enter key. The execution was entirely silent, but the impact was devastating. I did not destroy a single file, nor did I delete any client data. Instead, my command cascaded through the company servers like a digital paralysis. In a fraction of a second, I instantly revoked every single administrative privilege, locking down the core framework in an impenetrable cryptographic vault. Across the entire Aetherius building, from the engineering floor down to the lobby where the press conference was being held, every single computer monitor, presentation screen, and server terminal simultaneously went completely black. The frantic typing of hundreds of engineers abruptly stopped. Then, in stark, glowing white letters, a single, undeniable message illuminated every screen in the building. Access denied. Please contact the author Cipher Blue. On the television broadcast, I watched the color rapidly drain from Marcus's face. An engineer rushed onto the stage, desperately whispering into his ear. Marcus stared blankly at the massive presentation screen behind him, which now proudly displayed my hacker alias for the entire world to see. The trap had firmly snapped shut. He was locked out of his own kingdom, and the only person holding the keys was the woman he had just tried to sell for $20. The ultimate climax of my revenge arrived exactly 24 hours later, inside the glass-walled, 50th floor boardroom of Aetherius Solutions. It was an emergency meeting of the board of directors, convened to address the catastrophic system lockdown I had initiated, despite the absolute chaos echoing through the engineering departments below. Marcus marched into that boardroom with the arrogant, untouchable swagger of a man who believed he had already won the war. He took his seat at the head of the massive mahogany table, flashing his signature charismatic smile at the panicked board members. He was completely convinced that his aggressive legal injunction had terrified me into submission, and he was absolutely certain he was about to officially close the $800 million merger that would save his skin and make him incredibly wealthy. He had already uncapped his gold fountain pen to sign the preliminary merger documents when the heavy double doors of the boardroom burst wide open. The frantic chatter of the executives instantly died. I did not sneak in quietly, and I did not look like the submissive, broken housewife they all thought they knew. I stepped into the room wearing a sharply tailored, midnight blue power suit, my shoulders pulled back and my head held high, Flanking my right side was the billionaire Elias Vance, radiating an aura of terrifying authority, and behind us marched a phalanx of the 5 most ruthless, high-powered corporate litigators in New York City. Marcus shot up from his leather chair, the color draining from his face before rapidly flushing into a mask of furious indignation. "What is the meaning of this?" Marcus shouted, slamming his hands onto the table. "Security! Get this delusional woman out of my building immediately. She has absolutely no legal right to be here." "Actually, Mr. Sterling, she has every right," the lead attorney for my team stated, his voice slicing through the room like a steel blade as he stepped forward and dropped a massive stack of bound legal documents onto the center of the table. "And before you make another foolish command, I highly suggest you sit down and listen to the new owner of this company." Marcus let out a forced, hysterical laugh, looking around at his bewildered board members for support. "The new owner. Have you all lost your minds? I am the Chief Executive Officer, and we are signing a merger with Omnitech Global in exactly 10 minutes. "That is where you are tragically mistaken, Marcus." I finally spoke, my voice calm, steady, and echoing with absolute finality. I walked slowly toward his end of the table, making unbreakable eye contact with the man who had tormented me for 5 years. "You are not signing anything with Omnitech Global today, or ever." I reached into the folder and slid a certified corporate filing across the polished wood until it stopped right beneath his trembling hands. "You see," I continued, savoring every single syllable, "the conglomerate you have been desperately begging to buy this sinking ship does not make independent acquisitions anymore. Omnitech Global was quietly subjected to a hostile takeover. They were officially acquired by Vance Vanguard Corporation exactly 2 days ago." The entire boardroom erupted into stunned gasps. Several investors physically recoiled in their chairs. Marcus stared at the paper, his eyes wide with a dawning, suffocating horror as he looked from the document to the cold, triumphant smile on Elias Vance's face. Elias had not just warned the buyers, he had completely devoured them, turning Marcus's one golden escape route into a dead end. "But we are not finished," I said, leaning over the table, bringing my face just inches from his. "Let us talk about the product you were trying to sell them, the algorithm you claimed you built." I tossed a second document onto the table. It was the original, time-stamped copyright license I had pulled from my digital archives. "You never owned the Ethereus core architecture, Marcus," I announced, raising my voice so every single board member could hear the truth clearly. "You merely licensed it from an anonymous holding company that I established 2 years before we were even married. And if your lawyers were not entirely incompetent, they would have noticed a very specific, deeply embedded ethical conduct clause in the original blind contract." I pointed to a highlighted section on the page. "Section 4, Paragraph 12. I recited from memory. "The creator reserves the absolute right to instantly terminate the license and revoke all usage rights if the licensee engages in behavior that causes extreme public humiliation, moral degradation, or reputational damage to the creator." Your little $20 auction stunt at the Gala triggered this clause perfectly. I stood up straight, adjusting the cuffs of my suit. "As of this exact second, Ethereus Solutions no longer possesses the legal right to use a single line of my code. Your company does not own its flagship product. You have 0 proprietary assets. Your valuation is officially $0. This entire skyscraper is nothing but an empty shell of glass and steel." Pandemonium broke out. The board members scrambled out of their chairs, screaming at Marcus, frantically dialing their personal attorneys. One of the lead investors pointed a shaking finger directly at my husband. "Do you understand what you have done, Sterling?" the investor roared. "You solicited hundreds of millions of dollars from us based on a technology you did not even own. That is federal wire fraud. That is a massive Securities and Exchange Commission violation. You are going to federal prison for 20 years. Marcus's legs completely gave out. He collapsed backward into his chair, his hands clutching his chest as he hyperventilated. The meticulously crafted mask of the Silicon Valley visionary shattered completely, leaving behind nothing but a pathetic, terrified fraud. He looked up at me, tears of genuine panic finally streaming down his face. "Lucy, please," Marcus begged, his voice cracking into a miserable whine. "Please, we can fix this. I will give you whatever you want. I will sign any settlement agreement you put in front of me. Just give me the keys to the system back. Do not do this to me." I looked down at the man who had spent years trying to convince me I was worthless. I felt absolutely no pity, no anger, and no sorrow. I felt nothing but the beautiful, weightless sensation of absolute freedom. "I do not want a settlement, Marcus," I replied quietly. "I just wanted to show you exactly what $20 buys." I turned my back on him. I did not look over my shoulder as I walked out of the boardroom, leaving the frantic screams of the board members and the miserable sobbing of my ex-husband echoing behind me. The heavy doors closed, sealing his fate. I stepped onto the elevator, descending through the towering glass skyscraper I had helped build and had just ruthlessly destroyed. When I walked out through the lobby and stepped into the bright, warm California sunlight, Elias Vance was waiting for me by the open door of his car. I did not walk toward him as a broken wife purchased at an auction for $2 million. I walked toward him as a billionaire tech engineer, an undisputed mastermind who had just brutally reclaimed her own crown. The game was over, and I was exactly where I belonged. Thank you so much, our wonderful listeners, for staying with me through this incredible journey today. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please let me know your city or country in the comments below. If you found today's story empowering and entertaining, please help us keep this channel alive by joining the Maya Revenge Stories Patreon community. You will get access to our absolute best, highly detailed, exclusive true stories that are completely ad-free and too intense for YouTube. You can support us right now by simply scanning the QR code on your screen or by clicking the Patreon link found in the video description or the pinned comment. Stay strong. Never let anyone dictate your worth, and I will see you in the next story.